Hello for the 12th Sunday in Ordinary Time. And I call this Miracles and Global Warming. Miracles and Global Warming. Taking two readings. The first reading from the book of Job, Job 38, verses 1 and verses 8 to 11. And then Mark chapter 4, 35 to 41. Miracles and global warming. How did that come together? Well, the last few weeks or months really, I've been really involved in miracles. And one is because of the book of, or the book, not the book, but the presentation of the chosen and all of the miracles of Jesus Christ. It's presented in there fantastically well and interesting and powerful that Jesus did all of these miracles. And in today's reading, there's sort of miracles, especially in the gospel. In the gospel, Jesus um, is the boat crossing Galilee, the sea, the lake. And he's sleeping down in the bottom, and there's a storm, and they come to him rushing and says, "Save us. Don't you know we were perishing? Do something." And Jesus says, "Be quiet." And the storm subsides and calm on the lake once again. Jesus had the power to do miracles and even command nature to react to his will or the will of God. And in the first reading that backs up sort of that idea is from the book of Job, where Job is being lectured sort of by the God by saying, you understand, as far as God's in charge of this universe, and God has put a limit to how the wind blows and how the sea functions and so forth. And it's miraculous, just the mere fact that it was all created, let alone how it works. But miracles, really, one of the definitions of a miracle is when someone or something does a supernatural power over something. Super means above the normal power of nature. And so when Jesus walks on water, or when Peter walks on water, that's a miracle because you can't walk on water unless it's frozen. And so all of these miracles, as far as in the readings today, and even the ones as far as in the Old Testament. The last 2 weeks, I've been watching a 3-session, hour and a half each about, on the Testament of Moses. And it deals with the call, unbelievable, how God communicates, how they present it, unbelievable, and how Moses deals with the Pharaoh, and the 10 plagues and the miracles that God gave him power to do in getting those people out of Egypt on their march to the Holy Land. And I just think that is unbelievably well done, the Testament of Moses. You can get it on Netflix, just as you can get the first 3 sessions or the first sections of Chosen on Netflix. But it's miracles and the power of God, and a miracle is something that is supernatural. Interesting. How that all happened and all those miracles, I don't know. But what really hit me as far as when God is speaking to Job and explaining how the seas work or the oceans work and their limits and who's in charge of all this stuff, and all of these miracles of Moses in the Old Testament and Jesus in the New Testament, it brought me to the realization of what we're doing to our planet is not a miracle. we're destroying it. And we can't just wait around and say, God, fix it with a miracle. We are destroying our planet. And so the church, and in particular, our Holy Father, has written two documents. One was Laudate Deum in 216 and talks about the deniers of global warming. And then there is a much more recent one, Laudate Si, and that has to do with we have an obligation of doing something about it. And I think I'm proud of our religion that is speaking positively about our obligation that we should do something about it and not deny it. And so I think all you have to do to realize this is read the first chapter of Genesis in the creation of the world. To the first chapter, and toward the end, when it's getting toward creating men and women, God does there in 26, I think, verse 26, he creates men and women, and then he says, let us make men and women in our own image, after our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and the cattle. And then fill the earth and subdue it. We are supposed to help it, run it, enjoy it, and keep it God's gift to humanity. And that is a religious thought. I mean, religion isn't something you just go to church. And religion has to do with how we live and where we live and what we take care of and what we use and how we live. Have dominion over and responsibility toward the planet. I think maybe we need to talk a little bit more about that as opposed to these rules and these regulations and so forth. Well, there's rules and regulations on how we treat the earth, how we use and have dominion over the earth, and what's abuse and what's use. Religion's deeper than you might think. What God asks us to do is maybe different than we often think. If you go through the history of the world and the history of religion in the world, wow, there's an awful lot of different ideas. Well, I think one of these things is God created the world. Did he? Or was it always? Did he give men and women dominion over it and responsibility over it in the beginning of men and women in the world? And do we have that obligation of doing that? It's not just all miracles. Miracles are signs and wonders, and they're above natural phenomenon, and they're wonderful. But there are few of them. There are few of them. But there's a nitty-gritty. It's easy to misuse, I think, the world God gave men and women than it is more difficult to take care of it. I think we've been misusing it for a long time. I think we have an obligation, first of all, admit it, and then to try to do something about it. Miracles and taking care of the planet. Something worthwhile thinking about, praying about, and doing something about. Have a good day.